Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the country. Thanks for joining in. Hopefully you'll see the, I've got a notice on my screen. Got it, there we go. The slideshow there. So we're here to introduce the Science Meets Parliament program for 2023. The training will begin in January and go through to the in-person event in the beginning of May or end of April, still to be confirmed. So I'm speaking today from the campus of the Royal Military College on traditional Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg lands. It's a beautiful day in Kingston. Hopefully it is where you are too. Don't let the uniform fool you. I'm a professor here. This isn't a D&D program. We're still very much through CSPC and on the civilian side. But as one of the organizers, I'm really happy to be able to introduce the program. And I say one of the organizers. Let me just make sure that I'm on the right thing so I can click. Here we go. So this is your organizing committee for this year. So a few of us from RMC, Trushar, you can wave, from Lethbridge, Peter and Sandy from the Office of the Chief Science Advisor, Homa at Wilfrid Laurier, and Chris at York, and Wendy and Merdad representing CSPC, who are also both on the line. Et si vous avez des questions en français, vous pouvez les poser, mais je vais demander à Wendy à les répondre. Bon. Okay, what do we have next? So Science Meets Parliament has been running in Australia for more than 2 decades at this point. I was first introduced to it through one of the delegates who had attended the Australian version and found that it was extremely impactful in the way that she carried out her research and not only presented it after the fact, but even thinking about how they were going to form the research questions so that it could be useful for public policy and make sure that it get applied to the needs of the country. So this program that we run is not a carbon copy. Australia has just a different layout, a different landscape for their science policy organizations. So we've adapted it quite deeply for the Canadian context. What we did want to keep, though, was the lessons that they had learned over 2 decades and make sure that we could apply it to our own. So highlighting this right up top, this is a non-partisan, non-lobbying event. So if your interest is in asking for more money for a particular program or for science in general, or to push a certain political point of view, this just isn't the program for you. This one is about, as the second point says, really focus on building relationships, making sure that science, when I say science, please hear broad umbrella science, so thinking social sciences, including humanities, engineering disciplines, but that evidence-based research can become a trusted advisor, a trusted tool for policymakers, and that they have a point of contact in that world that can bring information back and forth. So we know that we have to include professional development. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, throwing a professor in a room with a politician and just asking them to hash it out is just asking for failure, right? So the first part of this program is going to focus on communication styles, exactly what the needs of policymakers, decision makers are, so that we start to understand each other even before we get into the room. And one of the recognized failures of the early years of Science Meets Parliament in Australia was that it featured white-haired old white men. That's not how we see Canada. It's not how we see research in Canada. So making sure to bake in diversity and inclusion, you'll see in our selection processes, it's really integral to everything that we want to achieve. So the program itself, we ran our first program in 2018 and followed it up last year, actually over the course of a couple of years through the pandemic. I mean, that shocked us as much as anybody, so we had to adapt kind of on the fly, and so why it stretched out a little bit longer. But now this will be the 3rd program that we've run, and I think we're narrowing in on a fairly professional program. I mean, it was in the past as well, but it's we're really tuning into what's going to be a nice streamlined program for everybody involved. The goals haven't really changed. So we're looking to create space where that relationship between researchers and parliamentarians can grow. And the objective is, as it says there, really to ensure that evidence-based, evidence-influenced decision-making becomes and remains a cultural norm in Canada. I mean, I think we have plenty examples in the recent past of how that needs to be maintained actively. So thank you all for putting your hand up, at least to try to push that forward. So what the program entails in pieces. So the first section, once we are selected in, and we can talk about selection processes afterwards. But for those of you who are selected, we'll begin in the new year with some remote training workshops. So these will be on the order of 5, subject to a small amount of change. And these workshops are going to feature really experts and practitioners in the different fields. So these are people who are, in some cases, uniquely suited to speak on their issues. So we've had, so the image there, we have Preston Manning and Dan Rumi, among other former MPs and party leaders. Obviously, Dr. Niemer, the Canadian Chief Science Advisor, but we've also had Remy Curon, the advisor for Quebec, to talk about providing science advice to decision makers, how exactly evidence is used in political decision making, where it meets the system and how the system works. Also, just general kind of background information on how parliamentary governance in Canada works, what the different departments do, how committees work, etc. Just so that, again, you're going in empowered, informed, even before we hit the ground in Ottawa. So in each of these cases, there's generally a presentation, as well as opening up for just open discussion with our workshop hosts. Now let's see. So once we come into the in-person event, as you would have seen on the website, it's a 2-day event. So the first day continues the workshops and training. We'll begin the day meeting with Dr. Niemer and have a discussion. Again, very candid, very open discussion about providing science advice in Canada, about her role, how she sees the office going forward. And as well, she has expressed an interest in hearing your elevator pitches and talking about science communication and what's going to be effective and what may not be as effective, let's say. Continuing the training, we bring in training experts again to go over just parliamentary operations, what's to be expected on the Hill, some communication workshopping. So now it's going to be talking with peers, sharing your research with each other. We've had some panel discussions. We'll see what we do this year. The focus of the day, again, as it has been throughout and will continue to be throughout, is to build trust and to build a connection that both of you on either side of the political and research divide can come back to. One of the other, it's not listed here, but one of the other key aims for this day is the cohort, the group, you who come and participate, to get to know each other, to talk across specialties, across disciplines, get to know other CRCs and postdocs, emerging researchers, and start to build a network among CRCs, which we found in 2018. Really, there was no other forum for that. So it's a wonderful opportunity to meet peers at similar points in the career and to build a network you can lean on for other things in the future. We've had participants co-author articles and co-teach on courses, also spreading around for peer review for grants, and it's actually been quite a nice side effect of the program for those who have participated. On the second day, so this is where really the rubber hits the road. This is our capstone exercise that's going to take everything you've learned through the remote sessions and the in-person workshops and put it into practice. So during the build up of the program on the back end, on our side, we'll be setting a schedule for each of you with at least a couple of MPs and senators. So we aim for at least 2 different experiences through the day. It usually rounds out to about 3 to 4 hours of time dedicated, plus the other activities that we have through the day. So these are set by us. We hand the schedule to the delegates. It then becomes your responsibility to connect with the staff to make sure that your timings are set and to get to your appointments on time. The type of meetings that we set are really a broad range. So some of them are going to be traditional, sit down in an office, discuss research, discuss what their needs are, what you might expect. But we have really run the gamut with the type of experiences that people have. So that can be shadowing the MP or senator through part of the day, so sitting in on other meetings that they might have, running into towards the House of Commons to respond to votes. We've set meetings over meal times, so that will be in the parliamentary restaurant or some offsite location. For some, let's say, high value targets, we've had group discussions, so that'll be party leaders, ministers. And we also try to look at the committee schedule to see if there are things that are going to be on the schedule that might be relevant for your interest anyways. So again, we can talk about how exactly we set these schedules. The matchmaking process is, let's say, more art than science. We look at your backgrounds, your specialties, which MPs and senators are interested, what their needs are, what their interests are at the time, and try to pair people up so that we're going to encourage the best possible outcomes, or at least avoid disaster. So the program closes with a reception. This year, we've seen the kind of an increased capability or capacity. So not only do we invite the entire Parliament, so MPs and senators, as well as their staffs, we also invite heads of the national science organizations, whoever's based in Ottawa, as well as the tri-agency heads. Who else have been there? Genome Canada, interested groups, let's say, to come to a reception just to expand our networking possibilities. The delegates in the past have used this time to share stories, to compare experiences, make arrangements for future collaborations, and even to catch up. So there was in this past experience, or in the past event, there was one delegate whose story stands out for me, who was talking with an MP that was a scheduled meeting, and because of her work, he said, well, I have a peer who's working on a bill right now that really should hear from you. And at this reception, that other MP came and they were able to discuss. And coincidentally, the relevant minister was walking past, so grabbed him by the elbow and brought him into the conversation. And here's the researcher being able to share the results of what they've found directly with the people who are writing the policies and laws for the future. So it's actually quite a nice time. And during this, we invite a few speakers. We try to get at least one representative from each of the parties. These photos are from 2018. It's a little dated now, since we have the who was at the time the Minister for Science and Sport. And in the middle row, we have Michael Chong, the Conservative critic, and MP Richard Cannings on the bottom of the NDP. And last year, we've also had the Bloc Québécois, and well, if our Green Party representative wants to come out, she's surely welcome. And what's I think empowering about this kind of last message is that they all have the same message for all of the delegates, is that research matters for Canada. It's a valuable output that across partisanship, setting that aside for Canada, for our future, it's something that they value and want to reinforce. So just to some extra motivation, so some quotes from previous delegates talking about how the program has made them rethink how they communicate research, the way they discuss with their students. thinking more about the role of decision making in Canada and how science or research-based advice fits into that process. What else do we have? So yeah, just the joy, I guess, of hearing from parliamentarians, the experience of learning that actually they are interested, actually they are quite nice and approachable people too. So for this year, what are we up to that has changed? So we've improved the workshops, so we're streamlined what became quite a long series of workshops through the pandemic. So we'll tailor that down to what we found over our experience has become the most impactful. We have lined up panel discussions with leaders from the public service, with leaders from government, current and former parliamentarians, as well as our funding agencies and their role in enacting public policy in Canada. And this year, for the first time, we're also inviting Banting postdoctoral fellows. So having a larger range of perspectives in the room is going to change things slightly, but should be a nice experience for us all. So looking forward, I just want to thank you again for coming out and asking for more information. Science Meets Parliament 2023 is gearing up to be a real powerhouse event, and I'm looking forward to working through it with as many of you as we can.